So I know it's been a long time since we've done an update on the house build here in Kyoto, but I figured I'd walk you through what's been done so far as we continue building this place out. So for starters here, we're in the living room and you can see it's still a total disaster zone in this area. The daikusan, or the builders, the contractors that are putting this place together, are here from sun up till sundown every single day of the week except for Sunday. So they're working 6 days a week to build this place out and get it done as quickly as possible. But our goal is obviously to build the best quality house that we possibly can, so we're not pushing them to finish this any earlier than is scheduled, which right now has been pushed into September of this year, which is totally fine. But what I want to do is walk you through what's been done thus far on the house and show you kind of where things are moving going forward. So without further ado, let's dive into our house build here in Kyoto. So I think probably the best place to start, and by the way, it's 5 a.m. here in Kyoto, so I'm trying to keep my voice down a little bit in the entrance of the house here because it's still open to the street and I don't want to wake up my next door neighbors. But for starters here, we are in the genkan, or the entrance of the house. So as you walk in the front of the house, the first thing you'll see is our tokonoma. So this is a style of tokonoma that I've always wanted to build out. It's a little different than a typical tokonoma in that this one has a rounded facade to it here. So this is something that is very welcoming when you first come into the house, and I think will kind of draw you in to the interior here. But the way this is designed is that the very bottom shelf here is actually something called naguri, which is a style of woodworking where it almost looks like a spoon has scooped out the wood. Right now it's completely covered with cardboard, so you can't see it, but I'll put an overlay on here so you guys can see kind of what I'm talking about. Just above that here, this piece here that's also covered with cardboard, this is a piece of urushi, or lacquer. It's a giant piece of wood that took about 6 or 8 months to complete because the drying process for lacquer takes a very, very long time. It requires multiple coats and each coat has to dry before the next coat can get put on. But this is actually what the bonsai will be set on. We'll probably put a stand for each tree when we display an individual bonsai on top of this piece of lacquerware, and then the bonsai will go on top of that. And then off to the left-hand side here, this is the shibori maruta, the piece of cryptomeria that we picked out at a local dealer here in Kyoto last year. It's already been installed, it's been cut. The daikusan did a fantastic job getting it cut exactly to the right size to fit in here, and then he built out the tokonoma around it. So once we can complete the look of this, by putting on the what's called nuri on the outside here, which is essentially kind of like a stucco type look, and the backdrop gets the sort of gold back that we're going to put in here, which I know sounds very gaudy, but it's going to look super cool when it's all done. Then we'll be able to take all of this cardboard off of here and show you exactly what this looks like. But for right now, this is what the entrance to the house looks like. All right, so just off to the side of the genkan, or the entrance, is the workshop space. This is where we'll be building out bonsai in the future, whether that be by myself filming for Bonsai U, or when we start having students come internationally to the garden here. But the space isn't huge. It's enough for probably me and maybe 2 or maximum 3 other students. More than likely, it'll be more of like a one-on-one or one-on-2 kind of scenario when we actually do start hosting students here. But one cool thing about the workshop is that the ceiling in here is yakisugi, so kind of burned cedar. I don't know if you guys have been watching my channel for very long, but way back in the day when I was building Eisei-en in Nashville, Tennessee, I actually did a whole episode on building a yakisugi fence as a backdrop when you walked in the nursery. I did all that myself and it was a tremendous amount of work. Here in Japan, this is kind of a standard industry thing here, so this can be mass produced for a much cheaper cost, and it looks significantly better than what I did in the States, obviously. But this is super cool here. They're gonna be punching a whole bunch of light holes in the ceiling here to install lighting. For those of you who ever studied at my nursery in Nashville, you'll know how bad the lighting was there. We're gonna remedy that situation here at Eisei in Kyoto. But another one of my favorite spaces in the house so far. And eventually the wall in here will be covered with nuri as well, which again is kind of a stucco. But in here, it's gonna be a little bit different than the rest of the house. This will be a darker brownish color in here on the walls with something called wada in the stucco, which is basically like small pieces of grass. So it'll have a very rustic kind of old feel in here when all is said and done. So this is probably my favorite part of the whole house so far, is the ceiling in the living room. I'm standing up on the second floor here, and you can see just how high up the ceiling is. But this is kind of a modern take on a traditional building style when it comes to kind of Sukiya style traditional Japanese architecture and design. So this is what's referred to as kesho daruki, which basically means like facade round poles, essentially. So we wanted to have this kind of really old school look to the ceiling, but this was done with a bit more of kind of a modern approach here in terms of how it was actually installed. So each of these individual round poles here is what's called a taruki in Japanese. And these were all custom cut from cryptomeria trees from the north part of Kyoto several months ago, and then dried specifically for this job. But on the upper side of each of these poles, they've been purposefully split. It's called sewari in Japanese, and this is done so that as they fully dry out over time, they don't split and separate on the visual side, or the side that you can actually see from the living room here. So it's kind of a cool old technique that makes these things look really nice over a long period of time. They don't actually like fall apart like most wood would. And also you can see the beams that we've got in the living room here. These are in fact not structural. They're real beams, but if you were to take them away, the house isn't gonna fall over anything. So these are also technically, I guess, a facade here, but they look super cool in person. And this is kind of a recreation of what you might see in a kominka, which is kind of an old style Japanese home anywhere across the country. So it might be a little hard to tell, but this is the kitchen space right here. This was installed just this last week, and then obviously it's been recovered with cardboard here. We went with a company here in Japan called Cleanup, which is not super famous outside of Japan necessarily. I think most of the companies that you guys would probably be familiar with would be like Panasonic or maybe Lixil, for example. But Cleanup is a company here in Japan that specializes in stainless steel kitchenware. So the kitchen itself, the facade, the surface is not stainless steel, but all of the internals of the kitchen are stainless steel, which is really nice. So, you know, all of the drawers and the shelves that get pulled out, those are made out of stainless steel, so it should last, hopefully, a significantly longer period of time than other materials. But this will be the sink right here. We've got the stove right here, obviously the range hood on the top. And then because I am much taller than my wife, I have my own shelf back here that is significantly taller than her space right here, which will be nice to save my back. So right behind me here too, you can't see it quite yet, but there's going to be a really cool kind of round window that goes in right here with backlighting to it, and I'm really excited to show you guys what that looks like when it finally gets installed. But as of right now, this is the kitchen space, and this is what's going to look like going forward. So this space right here is right next to the kitchen. This is actually my daughter's favorite space in the house so far. This is going to be her little tatami room. So meaning that the floor in here is going to be covered in traditional tatami mats. We wanted a much more open space than a typical tatami room, which would usually have sliding doors around it. This will be completely open, but there will be some sliding screens here, or some roll screens rather, that will come down from the top. So if you wanted to close this space off, if you had a guest that came over and wanted to sleep, this would be where they could possibly stay. So along the backside here too, this will end up being fusuma doors, which are, you know, sliding doors that are covered in washi paper, which is a very traditional type of paper. But that'll be across the backside here with shelves to the interior there. And then on the very bottom underneath there, we're gonna have what's called yukimi shoji, which is essentially, I guess it translates to snow viewing sliding shoji screens, but that'll be up underneath there just to give a nice, cool kind of traditional vibe to this space. But eventually, like I said, this will be my daughter's play space, and I think she's super excited to have this little area, especially given how small the place is that we're living in right now. So this back here is the master bedroom on the back side of the house. I showed this space in the previous episode that we posted about the house build here. And in that episode, I talked about installing a giant piece of keaki or gray bark elm, Japanese gray bark elm in here, like a big slab of that along the wall that we had sourced from Keihoku up in North Kyoto. Well, since that video was put out, the daiko-san, or the contractors, have put in that piece here, and they even added the red pine legs underneath. But of course, as it sits right now, you can't see it because it's fully covered with cardboard. One of the benefits of building a house here in Japan is that, you know, with the order of operations here, they have to install certain things early in the process, like the flooring, for example, and some of these features. But they're very good about covering those things up to protect them so there's no scratches on them when it comes time for the homeowner to actually move into the house. So unfortunately, I can't show you exactly what this looks like, but it is super cool. So once that gets revealed, I will show you guys in the future. But another thing I can show you here in the room is the ceiling. So this is what's called an oriage tenjo in Japanese, so kind of a semi-vaulted ceiling, I guess. On the interior here, this open space, this will be covered in washi paper as well, similar to the fusuma sliding doors in the tatami room. And then on the interior of this, all throughout here, there'll be internal lighting. So I guess you'd call it indirect lighting in English. It's called kansetsu shomei in Japanese, but that'll light up the ceiling in here, which will be super cool. So also the window behind me here, this will actually face into the main portion of the display garden for the bonsai once we actually get that built. So really nice view out into the garden. And of course the garden is a little bit small, but that's okay. We're gonna build something that's nice quality, I think. So rather than, you know, maximizing the number of trees that we have, we're going to try to maximize the quality here and the way that the garden is built, which would be, again, a nice view out of this window in the future. So on the exterior of the house here, they've put the final coating of nuri, or essentially mortar, that goes on the outside here. Maybe stucco might be the best way to describe it. But this is the final color here, kind of a grayish brown color. And then they put a texturization on here called barearu in Japanese, which gives it a really cool kind of old school vibe, I think. So this whole section here, this wall here actually, will have bonsai displayed in front of it. And the surrounding wall that goes around the entire nursery here will also have this same type of nuri and the same type of texturization and color, more than likely. We're still in the process of negotiating that right now, but that will likely be around the exterior of the entire property here. So there'll be a nice consistency to the look as the bonsai get displayed against this backdrop around the entire garden. All right, so that's gonna do it for this episode of our house update here in Kyoto. As I mentioned before, the house should be finished sometime in September, at which point I will give you a full tour of everything here, and we'll continue to build out the garden and show you that process here on YouTube and the Bonsai U platform as well. So thank you guys so much for checking out this episode here. Look forward to seeing all of you next time around, and until then, take care.